using a biff, right? And there's not always ones on job sites. And, some guys just go behind the truck and stuff. And, I'm just doing my thing. I'll be doing paperwork or I'll go across the job site. It doesn't bother me, but some of the females, it really triggers, which I don't know. I can't stand on that because it doesn't offend me. I always joke around with them that I am one of the guys. We talk about whatever we want, we do and say, you just kind of BS with them. And it's just like a family. Anybody's willing to lend a hand. Everybody is willing to teach me things. I work for a company that has 200 employees, and I am the only female boots on ground for that company.
Wow.
So all of the guys are very respectful, as I respect them. Like if you work, your 6, 7 months, most people are making over six figures for sure. I'd say around 100K to 120. Building in trades, I know people who clear 140 to 180, really shy of 200.
Welcome to the Blue Collar Blueprint Podcast. With Blue Collar EDU, I'm here to expose, teach, educate you guys about blue collar career opportunities and how to get started in those trades. Today we have guest Courtney. Courtney is part of the Operators Union. She's a 49er out of Minnesota. Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, Courtney, let's hop into, what do you do in the Operators Union? How did you get started? And what does a kind of a day in the life look like as an operator inside the union? I don't know a whole lot about what exactly you guys do. I just know you guys operate heavy equipment.
Yeah, so there's two sections. There's the highway heavy and there's the building and trades. And I recently just transferred over to the building and trades. So in my specialty, I haul transformers in the Midwest. We go from state to state. We haul from rail sites to substations. So typically on a Monday, we'll show up to our job site. We'll grab our semis and then we'll head out over the road for about a week. And then on Friday, we'll come back home and hopefully see our families for the weekend.
So you live on the road for the week.
Yep. Every week it's a different site.
Really? Okay, interesting. And so how did you get started in the Operators Union?
So my mother actually had mentioned it to me to go to the hall, and she's a local 49. She's been for 13 years. My grandfather is 42-year member, and it goes up the family tree pretty high. So she had mentioned I should go to the hall, and I took my test. They make everybody take a knowledge test on reading, writing, math. And then if you pass, you will be initiated, and then you can go find a contractor who will hire you as an apprentice, and then you'll start your 4-year apprenticeship program.
So you don't technically apply for an apprenticeship. You just have to go to the union hall and sign up.
You have to take a test.
Okay,
So,
so that aptitude test, that's common a lot for like the lineman trade. It's similar. Electricians, there's aptitude tests that you either take before you get an interview or after or during the application process after you apply, somewhere along the lines. What like it's reading, writing, math. What does that test look like?
you're basic. So, basic algebra, basic knowledge on the reading and writing, and then they have like a few where you have to like know how to read a tape measure. So it's a very,
Okay.
very basic knowledge. I went online and I just did a brief study before I went, and I passed with flying colors. I think I got an 85%, which is fairly decent. But once you pass that, once they say that you passed, you have to go out and go do your due diligence of finding a contractor that will sponsor you in your apprenticeship program.
Okay. All right. So then how do you go about finding that contractor?
Me personally, I went on Indeed and I let them know that I was seeking for a letter of intent, which just knows um, informs the union that you have a sponsorship through a union. Otherwise, if you don't do that, then they'll have you go through a program, which I'm not familiar with because I didn't do it that way, but I know that they have a program where they will go out and seek companies for you. But I went above and
Okay.
beyond and went on to Indeed and sent in a couple applications. So
So if you get sponsored by a contractor, are you doing your whole apprenticeship with that contractor, or are you kind of bouncing between contractors, or how does that work?
you should be with that contractor for the 4 years.
Okay, and inside that 4 years, what does the apprenticeship kind of look like as far as like, do you have to get hours in doing certain things? Is there in class like learning and training part of the union? How does that apprenticeship look like?
For the apprenticeship for our union, the operators, we'll get a pamphlet in the mail that will say first year apprentices, second, third, and fourth year, and what we have to accomplish at the training center for hours of training. And in there, it will be specific classes. Like some of them, you might have to do a 40-hour week with a piece of machinery of your choice. And then there's a get to know your union class that is mandatory. There's an MSHA new minor that is required. There's a few other ones throughout the year that are required, I guess, to build your portfolio for you to graduate. But you also need field hours as well.
Okay, right. Like for the lineman apprenticeship, we needed, I think it was like 160 hours in class learning, and then you needed to get different hours like, on the job. 1,800 hours doing transmission lines, or working on a transmission job, 300 hours working in a substation, X 2,000 hours doing distribution. So like the apprentice records those hours. You send in a monthly report every month. So then the apprenticeship committee will record those hours, and then because it's a 7,000 hour apprenticeship, so it took me 3 years, 3 months. They changed the curriculum now to where it's a minimum of 6 months. So if you at every step it's a 7 step apprenticeship where every step's 1,000 hours, but now it used to be you could crank out 1,000 hours in like 3 or 4 months if you're on a big job, working a lot of hours, and you could step first, second, third, fourth step. You could haul right through your apprenticeship in like 2.5 years. But they changed it now to where it's 6 months, regardless if you have 1,000 hours or not. You could have 1,500 hours at your 6 months, but you still have to do
Sure.
6 months. So the apprenticeship is going to take you 3.5 years regardless. Now, I think they changed it mainly because people were just crushing the apprenticeship. They're on big
Yeah.
jobs, just hauling right through it. And they're
Yep.
like, wait, hold up a second. Like these apprentices are getting by really really quickly, and the whole point of the apprenticeship is to learn. So inside the apprenticeship, are you getting certification? So if it's operators union, heavy equipment, things like that, are you getting like
Yep.
crane certifications, and what kind of certifications or education like are you getting?
Yep. So, there's two different when you go up to the training center. So in Minnesota, we actually are fortunate to have this huge training center. It's located in Hinckley, Minnesota. So we have two buildings. One is for your CCO certs for any type of crane certification that you would desire. And then in the other building, that is like your general knowledge and your like classroom really your book kind of knowledge, I guess, for the operators. And then there's another building behind that that's the small equipment classes. So that'd be like your skidsters, your rollers, your dozers, your excavators. They have haul trucks. They even have a really nice CDL program where they have their own trucks on site. You can go practice, meet teachers and professors that will do hands on with you, do your pre trip, and they it's a week long for your CDL and they pay for it fully if you're an apprentice or journeyman too.
Wow,
Yep.
that's actually an incredible thing because I always tell people like your Class A CDL, no auto restrictions is like the best certification you can ever get because that
Mhm.
opens up a lot of employment opportunity. Whether you want to get into the lineman trade, that's like the number one certification that you need to get. Or even if it's like you can do a lot with the CDL. You can go work the oil fields and just drive truck, or you can do long haul. You can do like there's just a lot of opportunity with a CDL. And then the crane certification is really good too. So with those certifications, I mean, and then as like a journeyman operator, you're able to take that experience elsewhere. So you're in Minnesota right now. If you want to travel, what does that look like for someone like you?
Yeah, so for me personally, with my company, we are based out of Minnesota. So that's our home base and we always come back. We only do the surrounding states, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan. We have a project down in Arkansas right now that just started and we just finished up in New York, one. But they're not typically long projects. Some of them might be about 3 months. Um, but you a general person cannot, if you're an apprentice, you can't go and travel or solicit yourself at all actually, but you can't put yourself on the list to travel out of state until you're a journey worker. Once you're a journeyman, you can go out of state to places like Arizona or anywhere, I guess, to go work. But if you're an apprentice, you have to stay in Minnesota until you graduate.
Unless you're working with the contractor who sponsors your apprenticeship and they travel, you go with the contractor.
Yes. There's like a fine line between that. I'm not 100% on that, but it's like if your home base was Arizona, being out of Local 49, you can't be contracted down to Arizona and be there for years on a project being um, not an apprentice. Or being a journeyman, you can do that, and being an apprentice, you can't. So, like, if Mortenson goes through state to state, if you go out of state and work for them for an extended length of time, they won't allow that for apprentices.
Okay. Yeah, it's very similar. Probably for most trades, like the lineman trades, the same way. Like if you apply for, I think like the Midwest lineman apprenticeship, it covers like North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, maybe. And so if you apply for that apprenticeship, you have the opportunity or the possibility to get sent within any one of those states inside the jurisdiction.
Yep.
So like that's
Yeah.
kind of one of the things you sign up for if you apply for the lineman apprenticeship on the outside is like, hey, I might have to travel from Wisconsin to somewhere in Minnesota to South Dakota or something like that. So that's something that you have to be prepared for.
Yep.
But yeah, as a journeyman, you have that journeyman ticket. I mean, you can take those skills, those certifications anywhere, right? I mean, if you're over 21 with a class A, at least you can. If you're under 21, people always forget that license isn't good across state lines if you're not
Yep.
21 yet. So
Yeah.
yeah, like that opportunity, I think it's really cool for people to if you get into an apprenticeship, become a journey level worker, and you build those skills and you get those certifications. You can take those certifications, those skills anywhere in the country, right?
You you can actually go out of the country too. I know many crane operators that I've worked with, they have mentioned that they've been all over the world with their crane certifications. With certain companies that are worldwide, yeah, you can literally go anywhere in the world as long as your contractor is there.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. That's really cool. I've only known a few linemen who've worked in other parts of the world, Africa or like Papua New Guinea or something like that. But they mainly it's because the contractor has like a military. I'm trying to think of the term where they have like a contract with the military to do like power line work on base and stuff like that.
Yep.
But yeah, it's you. I'm sure you could probably take that skill and go probably almost anywhere in the country. But that's super interesting that you're able to do that. So as it's not very common, and this is something I kind of want to talk about, is being a female in the trades. How is that for you? I mean, I know your mom's been in it, or I don't know exactly what she did, but she's part of the
Yep.
union and stuff. How is it as a female in the trades?
Yeah. There are definitely challenges, and you have to have, good, strong boundaries. But I go to work every day with a positive attitude, and I'm willing to work hard to get where I am. And as long as you have a positive attitude and you're willing to work, a lot of the men really support that. If there's things that I can't do, like if I can't lift something, or if it, if there's just things that bog me down a little bit, and I ask very nicely, politely, for help. Anybody's willing to lend a hand. Everybody is willing to teach me things. Um, I work for a company that has 200 employees, and I am the only female boots on ground for that company.
Wow.
So all of the guys are very respectful, as I respect them. Um, and when I come to work with just a positive mindset and I'm super happy, whatever, it sets the mood for everybody. It sets the mood for my crew. Um, they all come with positive attitudes and we just crush out jobs every week. So it's a very well camaraderie thing, I believe. There are some times where you do get in sticky situations on job sites where people might approach you or hit on you or ask you for numbers and stuff, and you just, respect your ground. I know my guys, when I'm over the road, especially, they'll stick up for me. So if somebody's really giving me a hard time, I'll just nudge one of my guys, and and they'll take care of it in their own way, in their own guy way, and I'll just carry on. So
I would imagine that would how it is. For most union trades, especially, there's that camaraderie or brotherhood where, especially for someone like you who was working, you get a sponsored apprenticeship with this one contractor, and you work with that one contractor. You're probably working with the same group of guys for the most part, right?
mhm.
So like you guys essentially, especially you're spending, several years with this company, with these
Yeah.
people that like, yeah, you do build that camaraderie where to a point where it's like, well, they're not family, but you spend so much time with them where they almost become like family essentially.
Yep.
I always think about it. It's like when I'm working, I'm spending, 10, 11, 12 hours a day with my crew, and those are the
Yeah.
guys that are watching my back, I'm watching their back. We're doing work, and we're just taking care of each other. And it's like, yeah, if someone were to want to step toes to my brother here on my crew, like, hey, he's got multiple people he's got to deal with. So I'd
Yep.
imagine it's probably a very similar thing for for a lady like you,
Yeah.
where if someone's gonna want to kind of toe the line a little bit, you're gonna have people to stick up for you.
Yeah, for sure. And like since we're over the road, like when we go on projects, if we're gone Monday through Friday or if we're gone 7 days a week, we eat breakfast together every morning and do timesheets. We all take lunch break or we don't take lunch break and we take snack break. And we take that together, and then dinner, we all go back to the same hotel. We always hang out afterwards, talk about work, things we can improve on. Um, so yeah, I mean, they are my family, they are my brothers, and if I did work with females, I'd be having sisters as well over the road. But at the end of the day, yeah, they have my back 110%, but they have to be willing to trust you too. If there's not trust built between you and your crew, then I don't really think you have anything between them, you know? And with that, they can let their guard down and they can relax and they don't have to be have a wall up constantly. Like I always I always joke around with them that I am one of the guys. We talk about whatever we want, we do and say, I mean, you just kind of BS with them. And it's just like a family, you know? So,
Yeah, I mean, you know how these blue collar people like to talk and stuff like that. It always kind of catches other females by surprise, like whether that be my wife or like my mom, and be like, oh yeah, like this guy we're talking about this, and he says this thing, and they're all like, either they're caught off guard, like what they said that. I'm like, and my dad, he'll disagree with me because he's a pipe fitter and he's been in,
yeah.
he put the pipe fitter union for 20 plus years. So like, he's like, he agrees with me. He knows what I'm talking about. But people like, it would probably be a shock for most females
Yeah.
that either, they're sheltered or, they didn't grow up around a blue collar family or anything like that, where if they
Yeah.
were just thrown in either in your position on the group of guys that you work with, and those group of guys didn't treat her any differently than they treat you, she'd
Yeah.
probably be like, there ain't no way I could do this, right? But you've gotten so accustomed to the culture at work,
Mhm.
that to you it's just another day. Yeah, you're just one of the boys. Like,
Yeah. I mean, And that just goes out to like anything like, you know, there was a thing that was brought up a couple weeks ago, like using a biff, right? And there's not always ones on job sites. And, some guys just go behind the truck and stuff. And, I'm just doing my thing. I'll be doing paperwork or I'll go across the job site. It doesn't bother me, but some of the females, it really triggers, which I don't know. I can't stand on that because it doesn't offend me. I mean, I have five little brothers. It doesn't offend
Oh
me at
wow.
all. Yeah, so I guess I'm just setting an example for them, but also I've been around it my whole life. So I grew up in a blue collar household, so I'm pretty accustomed to the language too. So,
Yeah. No, that's pretty cool. So inside your like what would be probably um as doesn't matter if you're female or not, like part of the apprenticeship or working in the operators union and just doing the work you guys do, like what's probably the hardest part or a couple hard things that you've recognized throughout your time so far?
I think it would be one thing that I've noticed is like finding a contractor. So, when you're in building and trades, you're typically on a long-term job. And if you have built a relationship with that certain contractor, um, usually you'll be called back. But if you're working with a contractor in highway heavy per se, and they sponsored you or they didn't sponsor you or they like you or they don't like you, and they don't give you a call back in the spring after, your 7 months that you work during the summer and you get laid off and you don't get a call back, then what do you do? Then your union will call contractors and try to get you to work for a different contractor, but maybe that contractor is a little different or you don't see eye to eye with things or so sometimes you're waiting on the bench for a little bit, or sometimes you're put to work right away. You never know, depending on what sector you're in. But I mean, if you're in building and trades and you have a 3 month or a 3 year project and you get laid off and they don't call you back, then you're back on the calling list. I think that's probably one of the most challenging things.
And it's kind of out of your control in a way, unless
Yeah.
you're. I mean, I guess if you're a really good apprentice and whatever, like what are the if there's work, then why are they laying you off? I
Yep.
guess, but if you're providing that value, then why? Like you should stay working, especially if it's like a 3 year project, right?
Yeah, no, and I guess, I mean, I'm talking about when project's finished. So
Okay,
when the ground
okay,
freezes and you're on highway heavy and the ground freezes and everybody gets laid off, I'm just talking about when you get called back to work come April, May, and you might not get a call back. So then you have to go to the union and just ask them to put you on the list, the waiting list to get in with a different contractor. For your 3 month project, it would just be kind of like when that project ends.
okay, okay, yeah. So I mean, that stuff's basically completely out of your control for the most part. You're just relying on
Yep.
contractors needing apprentices and the union doing their part as getting you back to work. Can you look for work yourself? Did you say?
No, you cannot
Okay.
solicit your own work. And
Okay.
yeah, so I can share a quick story about my mom. She just finished a 2 year project on building and trades down in Minneapolis. They're building high rises and they finished with a contractor. She was on the bench for half of the summer. She got contracted back to highway heavy work. They laid her off because it was the end of the season. And then
Mm-hmm.
a new contractor just reached out and contacted her, and she'll be on the project for the next 5 years. So it's ebbs and flows.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's yeah, ebbs and flows exactly. It's the same for lineman trade too. I mean, you're gonna have depending how the economy's going and
Yep.
things like that, there's going to be more work. The end of the fourth quarter, there's always less work. During the winter time, contracts are ending or their utilities are running out of money to pay contractors and they lay people off. It's all I think just part of it. You know what I mean? And but unless you have a good name and you have good repetition, there is work
Yep.
and you have a good network, then you can stay busy for the most part But I mean, I could think like in Minnesota or in the Midwest, where in the winter times the ground does freeze. It's pretty hard
Yeah.
to move dirt when it's frozen ground, right? So
Yeah.
how typically do you would you expect a layoff in the wintertime then?
Yep. Yeah. Come November, most companies lay off right before Thanksgiving, and then you get called back between April, May. It's very, very typical. And that would be more focusing on the highway heavy sector. Now, on building and trades, that's typically year round. I like to kind of think of it as everything from the ground up is building and trades, and everything from the ground down is highway heavy. So,
So highway heavy. Okay, kind of just briefly explain the difference between the two. Like you said, above ground, building and trades, but ground and below, highway heavy. So, what would be, I guess, kind of the roles between the two?
yeah, so it's more highway work. So highway heavy is going to be, your major highways, your parking lots. It's a lot of asphalt,
Okay.
a lot of grading, parking lots, a lot of milling, reclaiming. That's where I started off. That's my first company I worked for, and it was all that grading, reclaiming, paving, um, the whole 9 yards. But that was a very strict April, May to about November. So when I got with my second contractor, I was actually dispatched to a wind farm, and they work throughout the winter too. But you have a lot of wind out days, so a lot of
Mm-hmm.
days where they can't fly with the cranes. Um, so that was over the road, and then now the project that I'm on right now, we transport, that is our specialty, with oversized objects like transformers, like I was mentioning. And since we're not below ground or messing with the soil or anything, we're able to still continue operating 12 months out of the year.
Okay, perfect. So, I mean, that seems like it'd be kind of an issue for like, what do you do? Are you able to collect unemployment and you just sit, I guess, on the out of work books for those months you're laid off until the ground gets thawed out, or what does a person do if they're laid off for several months like that?
Yeah, most people do collect unemployment. That is a very common thing in the Midwest, especially with highway heavy. I know that our airport MSP does hire 49ers to do snow removal, and
Oh,
that
okay.
still will count towards your hours and all of that. So, but otherwise, most people do unemployment.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So like with the money then, are you working more hours, more days during those, I guess, spring and summer where, those are like working hours or more so like in the Midwest? Are you working a lot more, making more money? How do those kind of days look then?
Yeah, so on the like paving companies and highway heavy crews, they usually can get their 2,000 hours in fairly quickly. I would guesstimate around 6 months to 7 months. Whatever their working calendar year, a lot of people can get about the 2,000 hours.
Okay.
Otherwise, building and trades typically for certain companies, like the project that my mom's at down in the city, is she does a 40-hour work week with occasionally Saturdays.
Okay.
For my building and trades company, we can either go full blown 60, 70-hour work week, or we can do 30, 40-hour work week depending on the workload.
Okay.
If we have an emergency load or yeah.
So then what does the money look like for a journey, or I guess if you can kind of briefly explain like from, I guess, starting out as a first step or first period or first year apprentice to kind of journey level, and kind of what the steps of money to be made looks like as far as in the union.
Yeah, so first year when I started, I don't know the current wage right now, but when I first started it was 25 bucks an hour for your first year.
Okay.
Or you needed a certain amount of hours to get that next pay increase. And then the second pay increase was about $31 an hour, and then it'll go to 35 to 37, and then top out for building and trades right now is $46 an hour and some change. And you'll make that, yep, dollars an hour, and then it's about 42 for highway heavy. They have different pay scales as well.
Okay. Yeah. And then plus on top of that, the the benefits and medical retirement and stuff like that. I'm sure that union has.
Yep. So, I wrote this down because I wanted to speak upon it because I think it's a very good thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
right now our pension fund is at $11.30 per hour that we get into our bank for our pension. Next year, May 1st, it will be at 12.05 um, dollars an hour. So I did some simple math, and if we just look at 1 year, so I just did this year, 2024. So if you do $11.30 time, multiply that by a 40-hour work week, you'll come up with 452 dollars per week. If you multiply that by 52 weeks a year, that will be $23,504 per year. And then if you multiply that, I was given a formula by a union member, and it's 0.0175, and I believe that or divides it by the months, and you'll come up to $411.32 per month. Just if you're looking at 1 year, that's what your pension could pay out. Mind you, um, to be vested in your pension, you need five years in the union to receive anything from your pension.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we also, I just recently discovered we have a defined contribution plan, which is similar to a 401k or like an annuity, and we get $2 an hour into that. We also have an HRA, which is if you go to the doctors and you have a bill come in the mail, we got $2 per hour going into that. And yeah, so I don't know. I think it's pretty amazing the retirement stuff that they got going for us.
Your guys' contract, I mean, like as far as like the annuity, the HRA card, and things like that for us. There's a lot of unions too out there. Like I was talking with a guy, he's part of the UA in Minneapolis. Like they have a vacation fund. Iron workers, they have vacation fund where they get $24 every hour they work into a vacation fund,
Yep.
and they get a check every 3 months for that vacation fund. And a lot of guys just live off that vacation fund because just if you were to do the math on 60 hours a week for 3 months, that's a nice little paycheck that guys just live off that, and they take what they earn on a check and just put it somewhere else. So I mean, like those sort of benefits, the HRA card I use all the time. Like if I want to get
Yep.
massage, or if I need to go get a prescription, or whatever, my wife has to pay for a doctor's bill, whatever, I use the HRA card because there's several thousand
Yep.
dollars just sitting there. Like I can't use it for anything else except for medical related stuff. So like those little benefits like that are very cool, and people don't people always overlook, oh, you got to pay your union dues to blah blah blah. Like the union dues for me, I think it's like
Yep.
$500 a year, but you make that $500 like not that I mean, it takes you a day or basically a day to make $500 as a journeyman lineman.
Yeah.
So like I'm not too stressed out about $500 a year for some union dues. You know what I mean? So I mean that's just the way it is. But so is there what getting started? Like, is there any what do you need anything besides the basics like a driver's license, high school diploma, GED,
Yep.
be able to pass a drug test?
Yep. Those are all things that you definitely need. And like I said, I would go online and just get some refreshers on basic knowledge. I mean, most of us haven't done long division since high school, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to try to take it on a test, I mean, I didn't know how to do that. Like I needed a refresher for sure, you know? So, like I just brush up on the basic knowledge, and I think most would be absolutely fine.
Yeah, so for someone who wants to get into, I mean, you guys are running heavy equipment. Like if you're on building and trades or building and trades, you're what, running cranes? I would assume because you're setting things. And if you're on heavy highway, I think you said it's called. You're
Highway
using
heavy,
bit
yeah.
you're using heavy equipment, bulldozers, because you're digging the ground, you're
Yep.
grading and things like that. So you get a
Yep.
if you're into running equipment and driving truck and doing those types of things, it sounds like a pretty cool opportunity, especially
Yeah.
if you want to get into an apprenticeship and do on a scale of like 1 to 10. What's the physical exertion you have to?
So there's definitely there's so the highway heavy and the building and trades, right? Like those aren't, it's not cut and dry. You can operate machines. Most of them are going to be lulls, cranes on building and trades. And then the dirt world, they so call it, or demo. Demo uses a lot of those same equipments as dirt. And demo actually can be considered building and trades because you're demolishing a building, right? But you can still use the skiddy, the excavator, the roller, the dozer, all of it. So it's a very like loosely termed, I guess, two different sides of the world, but they do have a different pay scale, whichever one that you're on. And some of them have prevailing wage, or sorry, excuse me. Most of them do prevailing wage, which is
Okay.
like the union contract of you make set amount, right? So yeah, but on average, um like a good if you work, your 6, 7 months, most people are making over six figures for sure. I'd say around 100K to 120. Um, building in trades, I know people who clear 140 to 180, really shy of 200. So,
I mean, that's an honest number to live on right there. I know my cousin. He's from up north Minnesota, and he worked for a company, and it was a non-union outfit. And shoot, what's that town just on the other side of the border up there? Big. It's like the biggest town in North Dakota on the east side. If you're from that area, maybe you know Fargo. I think it is.
oh, okay. Yep.
He did a lot of work in Fargo for this outfit. In like I swear from the months of June, July, August into September, he worked 7 days a week, 16-hour days, and he would just
Yep.
crush it. And he just
Yep.
raking it. That's all he did was work. For those 3, 4 months, it's all he did was work. But then come cold season, then he gets laid off. But he made enough money to where, and then collect unemployment to where then now he
Yep.
was just like, hey, I'm gonna go spend a couple months down in Arizona for the winter. And he was a snowbird at 19, 20 years old. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
he just he got that job just by calling around and just like he wanted to do dirt work and happened to what I mean land the job, and then he enjoyed doing it so much, became a valuable employee with that company, and then they just worked him and worked him and worked him, and he loved it, and he just made so much money. He did it for a while. He eventually got kind of burnt out of it, but that's part of
That
most
happens. It's
things.
life.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So for top out for unemployment is 8.95. So I guess at this year, every year it changes and it's different, but the Midwest, especially Minnesota, is the highest unemployment. So if
Oh
you can live
wow.
off 8.95 a week, um, or if you do need to dip into your savings, because most people do save, right? Over the summer because they make so much and they have no life, and then how else are you supposed to spend it, right? Like if you're doing nothing, you're going to the bar every night. Um, but yeah, and another great thing, and I think most people or most trades have per diem, right? So that's the non-taxable money that we get every day for being over the road, which is very nice. Alone for my company, I can make over $800 a week if I'm gone for 7 days a week. In a midst of 7 days, I can make about $800 non-tax deductible. So that definitely helps your check when you're over the road.
Do they cover like hotels and stuff when you're over the road?
Yep. So if it's a short-term project, we'll get $40 a day hotel covered. And since we drive semis everywhere, our fuel's obviously covered because we're driving semis. Um, so yeah, the only expense is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Well, breakfast the hotel provides, so really lunch and dinner.
So I
So
mean
yeah,
that's what the per diem is for. Basically, it's meals and living. You know what I mean? Living in shelter essentially.
yeah, but if so, I did a 3-month project up on the Iron Range recently within the last year, and for that 3 months, I found an apartment for $500.
Oh wow,
So I kept a little over 800 a week. I'd pay that off, and I was raking it in. So making over 10K a month for sure, easy.
that's in Minnesota. I mean, depending on part of Minnesota, that's like really 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 good money.
Yeah,
Like really good money,
yeah, for
honestly.
sure.
Wow.
I think, and for there's a lot of people, a lot of younger people just coming out of high school and going into college. And for me, I mean, I don't know hardly anybody my age that's clearing over 100K a year. So,
Yeah, I can speak on that too. A lot of kids, a lot of people I went to high school with who they went to college, but by the
yep,
time they completed college, they're 22, 20, 24 years old. I was already a journeyman lineman making, well over six figures a year on
yep,
like almost a 40 or 50-hour work week. You know what I mean? Like, cool. Your degree does nothing for me, but whatever. I'm
yeah,
not going to
right.
disrespect people who go to universities or school. Like, you do what you want to do. I just, with blue collar EDU, it's more so just like, hey, these opportunities exist. Look at Courtney; she's making a great
Yeah,
living,
yep,
and she's able to do it. Or a lot of people are able to do it, right? Courtney didn't want. I mean, maybe she didn't want to go to school, or if she did, what was she going to go to school for? Maybe she wanted to be a nurse, but ultimately, at the end of the day, she's a journeyman, heavy equipment operator with the union, and she
yep.
makes a great living with great benefits.
Yeah, before this, I was actually in the financial industry. So when I graduated, I went to college for 2 years, and I was actually on my way to get my Series 7 within the financial industry. So I was a financial assistant for an awesome CFP. But yeah, he was an advisor and he was amazing. And but I wasn't making anything. I wasn't making my ends meet, and I knew I wanted more. So I, my mom encouraged me just to go to the union hall and take my test. So
Perfect. That's awesome.
yeah,
So to close this out, Courtney, what would be like three hard skills or soft skills? Hard skills being things like being able to read a tape measure or like those type of skills, and soft skills is like being able to have a good attitude or learn or show up to work on time. Like what would just be three skills for someone who want to get started in the operators union and get started in that career to have, like whether they're
yeah,
just graduating high school or maybe they're in their 30s and they're like, hey, I want to try this out.
yeah. My ultimate number one thing would be have a positive attitude. Like I spoke upon it in the beginning, but if you have a positive attitude, you can move mountains. Um, you and a good work ethic, right? They go hand in hand. That was our running joke for my crew is like when we had our turnaround employees, when they'd leave or come, whatever, if they had a positive attitude and they worked hard, they were in. We can teach you whatever else you want to know, we can share knowledge, but, and then I think, you brought up a really good point with showing up on time. We, to start our semis, we'll show up a half an hour early, unpaid, sit in our cars, but our stuff's getting warm and ready to go because you need to be ready to get out that gate at 7 o'clock. Like, so, you know, I think those are the most important things is, yeah, I would have a positive attitude, good work ethic, work hard, stay out of drama, just keep your head down, and then show
Keep
up
your
on
nose
time.
clean.
Right, exactly. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Courtney, I really appreciate you coming on this podcast to share your experience and your knowledge on the Operators Union. For anyone who maybe wants to learn more or follow you, I found you on a TikTok. Is there
Yep.
anywhere that people, if they want to follow you on TikTok, go ahead and shout out wherever you want people to find you?
Yeah. So my TikTok name is Courtney Ray, and it's gonna be so Courtney and then Raee0. Yep, and I have a few projects on there that we've just completed. Like we did Wartzilla engines with a gantry system, and that's pretty neat. And then I actually hauled the St. Paul Christmas tree for the Union Depot, so that was a pretty neat project to be a part of.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if anyone wants to see, follow along and see kind of what an actual boots on the ground looks like, she has some
Yeah,
cool videos on her TikTok, and I'll have that in the link in the description down below for you guys to honest just go click the link and you guys can go follow her on TikTok. Courtney, I really appreciate your time coming on here.
thank you.
Um, and for any of you who want to learn more about becoming a heavy equipment operator, you can go to bluecollaredu.com. We actually have a careers tab on there about becoming a heavy equipment operator either through the union or just general information to learn a little bit more. So, yeah, Courtney, thank you once again. And hopefully, everyone enjoyed this podcast. I know I did. It was very informative for me to learn a little bit more about the union and operators and what you guys do. So,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
yeah, you bet.